Welcome, folks, to another episode of Who's Ghost Shanties, brought to you by Who's Ghost Stories and the Orb Buoys. We have to use them all. We used them last time.
I know.
Unload them.
Just like I said last time, you can use the description, the link in the description, not the description of the link. You can use the link in the description to the Spirit Magica. Go ahead, get yourself in order. You'll get 10% off using the link and the coupon code. So make sure you grab the coupon code from there as well. And if you prefer the audio version, or if you do want to re-listen to it, you can get us wherever podcasts are found. If you go to Spotify, there will be exclusive questions and polls that you can participate in. Same with the YouTube chat. And if you're on Anchor FM, you can actually send us voice messages. So if you have any takes or legends or anything you want to add to the show, you can join.
Are you telling me it's Anchor FM?
FM.
For nautical? Oh, look at that.
We brought to you by Anchor FM.
That did get moved a little bit in the shuffle.
No, the last time we were talking about Marquette and Bessemer number 2. This time we're continuing our nautical sense. That works, I guess. It wasn't really a word, I just kind of made that up on the spot. We're continuing our nautical streak here, as we're going to investigate the Lake Erie storm hag and the Lake Erie monster, also known as Bessie. Sean, take us in.
Sirens and sea monsters. Myths to explain the unknown or long-lost cryptids. Lake Erie is home to both. These creatures were first documented in Homer's Odyssey, dating back to approximately 750 before current era. The sirens were singing enchantresses that would lure passing sailors to their doom, causing them to crash on rocks and drown. Charybdis and Scylla were sea monsters that were across each other in a narrow strait. As ships would avoid one, they were attacked by the other. Charybdis specifically would cause whirlpools that would drag ships to the depths of the sea. These creatures are all of their world and native to most bodies of water through many cultures and writings.
Lake Erie's siren is the Lake Erie storm hag. The storm hag is said to live below the surface of the water among the seaweed near the Presque Isle Peninsula. She has pale skin with ragged hair, glowing yellow eyes, green sharp teeth, and bony fingers with paralyzing to the touch pointed nails. The only warning of a storm hag attack is the song she sings among the wind and waves. Come into the water, love, dance beneath the waves. Where dwell the bones of sailor lads? Inside my saffron cave. If this warning is not heeded, she will create a whirlpool, destroying your ship, and she will wrap her long green arms around you as she pulls you into the depths of the lake.
Much like her more famous cousin Nessie, Bessie, also known as South Bay Bessie, is a lake monster first recorded in 1817. Bessie, the Lake Erie monster, is said to be a grayish, snake-like creature measuring 30 to 40 feet long. Bessie's first sighting took place near Toledo, Ohio, where two brothers saw a huge creature writhing on the shore. It appeared to be a sturgeon with arms. Frightened by the sight, the men fled. When they returned, the beast was gone, and all that remained were the marks from the thrashing and silver scales. Yes, Chuck. Bessie has been sighted in the Sandusky, Ohio area, and even as far as the Buffalo, New York area, with appearances as recent as the early 1990s.
Bessie has become part of the local zeitgeist. Cleveland has a minor league hockey team named the Lake Erie Monsters. The Great Lakes Brewing Company has named an IPA after her, and she has even had comics written about her. At one point in 1990, there was a $5,000 reward for capturing her alive, and there was a toll-free tip line to call in Port Clinton, Ohio. Whether she is a dangerous sea serpent or a mutated Lorraine cow, Bessie truly is the mascot and a cornerstone of the history or mythology of Lake Erie.
Sorry for the abrupt cut there. The doggies were out here with us for a little bit, and things kind of exploded. But as I was saying, as Alex can attest, I'm obsessed with the Loch Ness Monster since grade school. So I'll probably just go on and on and on about the Lake Erie Monster. So we'll start off with the hag here. Before we dive in too much, I know she's interestingly around the peninsula, which I'll ask you about here in a minute. But do you think the storm hag has ever been attributed to shipwrecks like the Marquette and Bessemer? Or do you think that it's been more factual for shipwrecks like that?
So personally, I hadn't seen anything that attributed her to actual shipwrecks in, like, factual, like, unexplained shipwreck. I like to think that she took down the Marquette and Bessemer. that kind of throws our insurance frauds theory in the garbage. But nothing about actually sinking ships. But I wouldn't be surprised if she was accredited to mysterious drownings.
Yeah. I was going to say, knowing that, like, she's pretty much almost exclusively Presque Isle, I imagine that there's less of the shipwreck thing only because ships don't get that close to Presque Isle. Like, they're close, but
Yeah, there's the
that's
whole beach
relative.
break.
Yeah, there's an actual break, so I imagine I have to wonder as well. Just my own personal thoughts, specifically because the song mentions a saffron cave. I wonder, the ever classic, if you're from Erie and you've been to Presque Isle, you're familiar with this, but the stone breakwalls on the beaches, that is pretty deep water out there.
Yeah.
Could there be a cave as part of that underneath? It'd be interesting. So,
And
that's
is it a
my
cave or more of a garage that the SS Marquette and Bessemer number 2 is parked in?
That's also possible, because that is about where that's the line where ships can be. So, no, I definitely have to agree with Sean. I don't. I'm less likely to believe that the Lake Erie storm hag has been attributed to any shipwrecks, but definitely I could see mysterious drownings or disappearances. I can definitely see being attributed to that. I do actually have a question, and I don't know, maybe Sean, you might have the answer on this one. But when is the first mention of the Lake Erie
Ask
storm?
the same question.
Because I
couldn't find
never
anything.
heard it until I was an adult. And I was like, I never heard this story growing up, so I wondered.
And as you were talking, I was going to say also, I didn't see anywhere where it said where this myth or, sea shanty came from.
Because I had a theory. I'll let you finish.
I
based on
was
what
just
you
gonna
said.
say that I didn't see any anything really time stamping when it was heard. It's the same for me until reading more into ghost stories about the lake. I had never heard of the storm hag personally.
So, I had a theory that, you mentioned the beach break rocks, the wave breakers that are there. I wonder if it started before those were in place, because, like you said, that water drop off is immense, and without those, the waves and currents would be insane.
It easily pulls you. Because while we know whirlpools, the smaller version of it are eddies, and those are, if you've ever been to the ocean, if there is an eddy, you will get pulled down, and that is dangerous. And so, with our lake being the way it is, I imagine that is a possibility.
No, and that's the only thing that I could think of is before those were there, that the area would have been a lot harsher and more dangerous because you would have those waves and currents just coming in uninterrupted.
Right.
So I kind of wonder if that's where
Story
she started.
originated.
Yeah. And that would make sense with the Saffron Cave too. If those weren't there, you had people going out further and further from the beaches, from the peninsula, if there was something that looked like a cave, or somebody was drowning and they thought they saw a cave. Like,
So I am reminded because it is the Lake Erie storm hag. It's not exclusively Presque Isle, but that's kind of the thing that we've seen because we've only heard of this legend very recently in our own history.
Right.
But I know my grandmother used to have a cottage on Lake Erie, but further out, almost towards New York, and I can attest there are some like stony outcrops and caves along Lake Erie. So I would be more apt to believe that because it's the Lake Erie storm hag, maybe it's more of a regional myth that's not necessarily from Erie, but it's finally worked its way into
Right.
our personal, and so we've connected it to Presque Isle where we have had people that drowned and died, and so
seriously.
kind of bringing that in.
I was gonna say, because even on like the bayfront, there's caves.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it was just interesting to see that it specifically said Presque Isle Peninsula.
Yeah, it's just such a unique, specific detail.
Right. I don't know if it's because there's less seaweed as you get closer to the actual, bayfront,
Yeah.
but that's not necessarily true either. Just look at any of the scuba divers that come back up. Like,
Or maybe like it is from when it was earlier in Presque Isle's history of like being like a tourist attraction, that there was a lot they didn't understand with like how deep and dangerous it was.
Yeah.
And
Right.
the rest of the lake they knew that's deep water, that's lake. Like they just thought Presque Isle, everything around it was a beach. So you have somebody that
And
also
you find,
drops.
yeah,
yeah.
that's very possible.
So,
Not part of this episode at all officially, but when I hear about the Lake Erie storm hag, the first thing I think of is the Lake Erie rake, which is another one that didn't show up until late 2000s, early 2010s. So it's one of those where I'm like, I think more of it is probably area region of the lake, and we're just
This is
it's
our
made its way down.
this is our localized, spin on it.
Yeah. Versus and when we get to Bessie, the fact that we actually have a timestamp, we have some pieces. So yeah, I not saying that I don't think that the storm hag is real, but it's just there's
It seems more nebulous instead of
Yes.
exact,
Yeah.
pinpointed information.
we don't have a start date. We don't have a first. Well, we don't have any.
No,
sighting.
we have
No.
we have a headless horseman. Like,
We have a story, but there's nothing attributed to it besides possible drownings. Like, there's no shipwrecks, there's no, that must have been the hag, which maybe back in the day there was. But
right?
But
even
they've never lived on. They've never became part of the legend.
yeah. So, I mean, it's definitely interesting that, like, Presque Isle would have a siren legend to me. And I, like both of you, I didn't know about this till much later in life as I got older that this was ever a thing. So, like, it would also be kind of cool to find out, like, how widely known is the legend even told? Like, are there more people that are like, I've never even heard of this?
Or was it something from a time period? Beware the boogeyman, or things like that.
Beware
Was
the
it a
storm
warning?
hag, yeah.
Keep your
Don't go
kids-
swimming out by yourself because the storm hag will get you.
Stay away from the peninsula during the storms because storm hags are coming. Because
Right.
that was the other part of the legend I read, too, was that she wouldn't attack always during the storm, but she would wait till after the storm during the calm.
Once
and
she
that's
lets your
when,
guard down, yeah.
when she would come get you. So I could definitely see that just being like a thing moms would tell their kids, like,
Yeah.
even after the storm, don't go in the water because the water still would be dangerous, but
I don't trust you,
Yeah.
sir.
so yeah, I could definitely see that being too, like this being just a local thing, like, hey, don't go in the lake, storm hag, it's gonna get you.
Yeah. Drink your milk or the rat catcher will take your teeth.
Beware the hook man. Don't make out on the side of a road. Yeah.
I definitely think so, and I think pivoting from that into Bessie, this one's really interesting to me. Like just following the history of sightings, like Sean's research said, all the early sightings where it was serpent-like, it was snake-like, but then like I found like as I was getting into like sightings through like the 60s, 70s, and 80s, that's when like it seemed to take on more of like a Nessie form instead of just being serpent. So like I kind of like am curious like the original Bessie, is it a serpent, and then eventually like the popularity of Loch Ness kind of morphed what people were seeing. What do you got?
So, if I may, actually, a lot of the like lake monsters historically, all across the world, their earliest findings, their earliest sightings, tend to be attributed to sturgeon, exceptionally large for what was known as their size at the time.
Well,
And
even a sturgeon.
I was
can
saying,
get
yeah,
up to
you know,
30
get
feet.
huge.
Like,
300 pounds.
But we're talking like even bigger than that, and so the legends start in almost every lake monster story. They almost always start out as either sturgeon-like or snake-like.
Yeah.
There's always this kind of clear moving body that moves like this that causes some kind of big wave, markings left behind, something like that. There's not often, and I can actually say that, which is nice, often these lake monsters, there's not really like attacks on people.
Yeah.
It's more or less people stumble upon it, it's frightened and trying to run away. And so as far as like lake monster legend and lore, yes, as the popularity of that very original, which we know now with history was a planned photo, that was not an actual photo of Nessie, but that image has become so synonymous with lake monsters, even, as far as us calling our monster Bessie, and several other lake monsters having some kind of SE type, that is 100% being connected back to that one image. So yes, we've definitely had more of the plesiosaur style design for them. Heck, there was a movie that came out in the early 2000s, the Water Horse or something.
Yeah.
That's the entire basic premise of the design of lake monsters, is based solely off of that idea. And
horse head,
which funny enough is literally just from the ancient, or not really, well, it is ancient, old medieval style understanding of the hippopotamus.
Yep.
This hippopotamus is literally called the water horse. That's what its name means. So it was literally this idea of the head of a horse, because they had those big chomping teeth,
and
and they were in the water.
Flared nostrils.
Yeah, so there is some historical facts of evolution and why these things are the way they are. But this is where I get to transition into do I think that these sea monsters or lake monsters are real? Yes. I will 100% say I don't think that they're just large sturgeon. I think that they are their own kind of creature, but we've really have never really fully seen them.
So, do you think that it is more like a sea serpent, or do you think it's more like the classic plesiosaur kind of shape?
So, considering most of the physical descriptions that we've ever gotten are more of the sturgeon-like, at least for Bessie itself, I'm going to say more of that serpent fish-like. I imagine it might be serpent, but it might have like fin appendages, probably mistaken as like kind of legs, but they're more of fins.
Right.
Not quite full on like plesiosaur with the clearly 4 fins and long neck.
Dolphin fins.
Yeah, I'm seeing it more as like a straight-bodied fish, serpent-like straight with some fins that go off to the side that give the appearance of a limb. Yeah.
And I agree with that 100%. Like I do think, like especially the Lake Erie monster, is some sort of like actual like serpentine animal that isn't seen too often or isn't thought to be there. Like the one thing I've always thought when hearing the description of it, because they all do say little fins. Almost this one description was from a boat. They said the water was churned up for like a half mile, and it looked like it was wrestling something underwater. And when they got close to it, it looked about 40 to 50 feet in length and about 4 feet in circumference with a dog head. And that like made me think of like a type of like eel or like a dragonfish, because they can get long and big, and they've got the little fins. They swim like a snake, and they would have that not fish face or horse face.
Japanese mythology, the unagi is a giant eel and very much the same kind of pattern. Like, that's why I said like these are worldwide creatures. They're not exclusive to Loch Ness and Lake Erie. No, these are
they're in all bodies of
everywhere.
water.
Yeah,
Like, there's a reason why ancient maps would have sea serpents on them.
Yeah. So which is why I say I definitely think that it is a real factual species that we haven't truly discovered, which goes to the other fact of how much percentage of the world is ocean and water?
What is it? 70?
Right around 70-ish percent. And how much of the world's oceans have we explored?
Close to like 10.
Yeah. So realistically, we have barely scratched the surface of underwater biology, and so that's the really cool thing about specifically the science behind this, and why cryptozoology. I get really excited about cryptids because so many of them are connected to water because we don't know, and if you know anything about modern biology, there are new discoveries of aquatic creatures and insects every year. Dozens of new creatures, and it's like there are things like the giant squid, the kraken, we thought was a myth until the late 1990s when we finally had a body and it was like, holy crap, like
everything's a cryptid until it's discovered.
Exactly, and so all these water-based ones, I definitely have a stronger connection to reality than I think a lot of the wood ape ones. I'm not saying that Sasquatch isn't real, because he's totally real. We're gonna find him one day. But 100%.
I agree. I believe that there is something there that we just haven't, found. I mean,
Yes.
it's found, but
We talked
isn't
about-
properly documented.
Yeah.
We can't even find a 350-foot boat in 60-foot deep water.
Yeah, I doubt we're gonna find something that's living and can swim and move. Yeah.
We just talked about how dirty the lake is and how it's hard to see down there. Like, if something comes to the surface, you'll see it, but, like, how often are fish coming to the surface?
And we see water spouts all the time.
Oh,
Like, and Bessie is actually a grayish color in most descriptions.
Doesn't help with the water.
You're not going to see much. Well, you'll see a lot of gray in the murky water, but it's not something that you're going to, be able to differentiate or make a shape of if you're just looking at it.
Yeah. No, and like with water too, like I know the one thing was from a captain that was shooting ducks from his boat, and he startled it out of the water, and he saw it like swim away. So I mean that goes with like if you're seeing them, it's usually because you're scaring them away. But then with that too, unless you're right next to something or there is land next to it, if you see something in water, you can't tell the size.
No.
So like the boat captain said, it was longer than a fishing rod, which fishing rods are like 12 to 15 feet usually.
Yeah.
And then all these other ones that are from a distance are saying it's like 40 feet long. That's a big gap, which we just said sturgeon could grow that big. But if you're looking at something from a distance, you don't have anything to compare it to in the water.
No.
It could be 10 feet long. It could be 40 feet long. Like, you just...
It's part of the reason why megafauna, very large land animals compared to their current size that we see, it's why those stories are all over the place. There's a reason why, there's stories of giant snakes all in South America, and 90% of it is because when a snake dies, they they stretch out, so it's hard to get an accurate reading. And far away, it's hard to tell. It's really hard to accurately tell size from a distance, and any scientist, even cartographers, people that make maps, have a hard time judging size from a distance, and that's kind of the reality.
It's all perspective.
Yeah.
And if you're an average person,
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to know how big something is. Like, looking at these walls, if you ask me, like, how roughly big this is, I wouldn't even be able to tell you that much. I'd be like...
Bigger than a bread box.
Yeah, like...
It's accurate.
Like, so it's bigger than 6 feet. That's what I can tell you. So, I mean, if I see a glimpse, or even for, like, 10 minutes, some serpentine creature swimming at the top of the water, I'm not going to have any idea...
Also, to put that into perspective, because you can't see the rest of the room, Bessie could fit in here. So that lets you know about the perspective from person to person.
Yeah. It's just interesting to see all the different length facts. And, like, the one with the boat, it doesn't mention how close they got to it. But, like, I imagine they weren't too close, because if you're seeing water churning for a half mile, you wouldn't know the water's churning that much unless you're from a distance, I would think.
Yeah, and you're not going to sail towards it.
Right.
Like,
because that's a big area for one fish to be flipping and floundering. But I'm glad to hear that we all do think the same way, that there is something... Bessie's real. What it is, we... don't really know.
Maybe not in the totally...
It's not a plesiosaur.
Yeah, it's. I was gonna say it's not really the. It's not Cleveland's Lake Erie Monsters designer, and like.
No.
It's very much. It's definitely something, but we aren't positive on what it is.
I think in folklore, it's been romanticized to be that larger than life, bigger than life lake monster. Because, like, I feel like, too, like...
It's a more fun story.
Yeah, it's a more fun story, and if you're designing something and you put, like, an eel or something of that nature on, like, a shirt, it's not going to look as cool as if you put a plesiosaur or something on there. Yeah.
And if you're running away from it scared, of course it's going to be the biggest, scariest thing you've ever seen.
Yeah. You're gonna give it little cute horns and a doopy-looking face that looks like a hippopotamus, and I'm very specifically calling out that movie right now in that design. But
I was gonna say, so you're saying it's a dragon air?
no, Dragon Air is beautiful. It's Dragonite. No, so in all reality, the other thing to keep in mind as far as water and size of animals, and this is something that's often forgotten, is that there's a thing called ripples, and like sometimes what looks like 20 feet is actually just 10 feet. It just has moved quick enough that the ripple is still following the pattern. So
the light refraction on
exactly.
it.
It messes with that perspective so much. So sometimes things get bigger than they are.
That's true. If you're looking down at the lake from two different points of view, you're not going to see the same thing at all.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Could be the actual length of a fishing pole.
Yeah. The first caption could have been 100% right. Like, it's like 10, 15 feet long, but everyone else...
become 30, 40 feet. Yeah. So, yeah, there's some...
Ooh, what if they travel in a pack?
Or a school.
And, like, so... I'm going to answer Joe right now, because he's going to watch this, and I know exactly what he's going to say, because he says the same thing.
Why isn't there photographic proof with all of our current technology?
He's literally going to say, and he's probably saying this right now, why haven't we seen a dead one? And especially with water ones, like, they're going to deteriorate very quickly. They're going to get eaten very quickly. We talked about the boat captain. So, I mean, if they washed up on shore, there would be parts, but seagulls.
Mm-hmm.
Pick that thing clean then. So I mean, it is possible that a dead one has washed up on shore, just picked apart, and you see the remains, and you're just like, oh, it's just whatever. When I see a dead fish on the beach or parts of dead fish, I don't try to figure out what it is.
I'm not staring at it to be like, what type of fish was
I was gonna say, and we all know how shifty the Loch Ness Monster is. That captain could have been the Loch Ness Monster.
So I was trying to get my 350, so I mean, yeah, it's very possible.
No, and I love it. And when I first heard that we had our own lake monster, I was happy as a kid. I was like, oh man, what if we ever see it? And
I was very upset though and I know there's conflicting stories of why it's named Bessie. Like as we said, part of its name is because it was thought to be a mutated Lorraine cow that had gone missing.
Which is
so that's
amazing.
why it's called Bessie.
Yeah.
But I have always hated that it's kind of derivative of Nessie.
Nessie, yeah. Which has led to its own issues.
So I do think this was another fun one. I think we had fun. But any final thoughts on either the hag or Bessie for you?
For me, like I said, I'd like to know more about the history of the storm hag regionally, not just here in Erie. I would like to know who all's heard it and when it started. So,
I like that there was just like a panic about it in the early 90s. Like one of the articles about all of the sightings and the reward in the 90s was actually in the Los Angeles Times.
Oh my god.
Yes! We were in the LA Times.
I love that there was a toll-free tip line.
Yeah.
Call with any of the sightings, and there was a $5,000 reward. Like I love that. That's the stuff that you hear about in movies, like, and we're talking about really campy, ridiculous movies.
Sharknado.
Take a picture with Bessie, win a prize. Like, I love that. I love everything about that. But no, Bessie truly is, I think, another regional legend, much like the Marquette and Bessemer number 2 OG. Basically, this is something that is more widely known here and the surrounding counties, states, all along Lake Erie. But I love that it has its own slice in every single area.
No, I agree. And like, now that you bring up like the mad like streak and like dash of everything in the 90s, like it's even like crazier because there's never, like you said earlier, there's never been anything destructive attributed to it. Like, it's just, this is what we've seen, and this is what's happened, but now we've got to find out what it is. We've got to capture it. We've got to see it.
And there had been sightings through the 60s, 70s, 80s, and then somewhere in the 90s, it's just like, well, and I know it's because there were a lot of sightings in Sandusky around, like, Cedar Point.
Yeah.
But yeah, it became Bessie Mania.
I think Cedar Point would be like my favorite sighting to find out about because like if someone's just riding the Magnum and they just look over the hill
and there's just like that would be terrifying.
Yeah, and that split second you're down the hill already. But like I don't know, I love Bessie and I agree with both of you on everything. But I think that's all we've got for this episode.
Yes.
Thanks for coming in. Since I didn't do the intros at the beginning, this is my research expert, Sean, paranormal enthusiast, Professor Alex Wheaton, and of course,
Dog Wrangler.
Yeah, and Dog Wrangler, as we've got a couple extra guests out here. So, thanks for coming. Thanks for tuning in. Like and subscribe. Come back next week for some more.
Thanks, guys.
Stay in the light. Alright, so we'll start with the hag because As Alex knows from grade school, I am obsessed with the Loch Ness monster, so I... this out. As Alex knows from grade school, I am obsessed with the Loch Ness monster, so I... this out. Oh my God. We'll have a lot of editing out to do. You guys want to stick? Let's go back inside. That escalated quickly.
Riley really didn't want to talk about the Lake Erie storm hag.
That went from 0 to 100.
And everything blew up.
As Alex knows from grade school, I am obsessed with the Loch Ness monster, so I...